Hyundai missed out on the Japanese luxury explosion of the 80s that brought us Acura and Infiniti and Lexus. After all, they didn't even make it to American shores until 1986. But now 30 years later, they're following the same paths as their neighbors in an attempt to bring Korean luxury to the market with their upscale Genesis brand. Starting in 2017 with just two models, the G80 and G90 sedans, reworked versions of the Hyundai Genesis and Equus, it's now time to round out that lineup with a bit more punch and personality. Hi, I'm Mike Perkins from CarGurus, and this is the 2018 Genesis G80 Sport. Now, to make the Sport, Genesis took the engine out of the G90 and then made some subtle, if significant, changes to the exterior of the standard G80 sedan. The front fascia has been sharpened with this new copper-trimmed honeycomb grille, a trim treatment that continues in the headlights, the wheel caps, and the interior stitching. And all the places that you would normally find chrome have been replaced and murdered out with black or smoke-tinted trim instead. The fogs have been replaced by these vertical brake cooling intakes, the side skirts are more aggressive, and out back the rear bumper has been redesigned with quad exhaust tips and a mostly for show diffuser. With this aggressive exterior, a twin-turbo V6 and an adaptive suspension, it's easy to think that this is going up against the AMGs, the M's, and the S's of the big German brands, but that's just not the case. In fact, I'd argue that the G80 Sport was named incorrectly. This isn't a Sport, this is a mid-size four-door GT car. It's much more at home next to the American examples of sport sedan, the CTS-V or the Continental Reserve, and that's for two reasons: price and weight. Now, the G80 Sport comes fully loaded. The only choices that you have are your paint, your upholstery, and rear or all-wheel drive. Now, this is part of Hyundai's scheme to keep production costs and therefore price tags down. This one here is the rear-wheel drive version, and it is really well equipped for $56,225. For that, you're getting full LEDs, heads-up display, this panoramic sunroof, quad zone auto climate controls, all the autonomous safety systems, really too much to list here. And to get a comparably equipped 540i, for instance, you'd be looking at another 10 grand at least. Keep checking those option boxes, that can go as high as another 20 grand. Now, the Lincoln, the Cadillac, they are going to cut that difference in price dramatically. But the G80 Sport will still beat both of them by $4,000 or even $5,000. What are you sacrificing for those savings? Well, not a lot, but there are some noticeable downgrades. First, it's the interior. I know this is personal preference, but I can't stand this carbon fiber trim. I much prefer the matte wood that you get with the regular G80. And this shifter, it's too confusing. It's got forward for reverse, back for drive, and a push button for park. Either give me the shifter or give me the buttons, not both. And really, this whole interior reminds me a little too much of the Sonata, and that's not a good thing for a brand that's trying hard to distinguish itself from its parent company. The second big difference is the weight. This rear-wheel drive trim lands at around 4,500 pounds, and it feels it. In fact, it feels massive. Go for all-wheel drive and you're looking at more than 4,700 pounds. In fact, the G80 is between 300 and 500 pounds heavier than all the competition. So you are getting a bit more for your money with the Genesis. So what's good? Well, a lot of this is good. In fact, most of this is better than good, but let's talk about the engine. This is the same engine out of the G90 and the Kia Stinger, a 3.3-liter twin-turbo V6 with 365 horsepower and 376 pound-feet of torque. That's just 7 pound-feet down from the optional V8 on the regular G80 sedan, and the difference is here it arrives at 1,300 RPM. If you want peak torque in that V8 or the regular V6, you have to wait around until 5,000 RPM, and that alone makes the G80 Sport the trim to get in this lineup. There's no question. It has a wonderfully linear pull that will carry you to 60 miles an hour in near as it matters to 5 seconds. and the quarter mile will happen in less than 14. It is everything that I want out of a sports sedan power plant. Okay, that's not completely true. It could be a little bit throatier. And don't get me wrong, this does sound really nice, especially when you get on it. I don't know though, I want just a little bit more growl if you're going to call it a sport. The cog swapping duties are handled admirably by the 8-speed Shiftronic, although there's a little bit of lag with the paddle shifters. And with 6th, 7th, and 8th gears all being overdrive, the G80 Sport returns an EPA estimated 1725. Though real world combined, I'm getting closer to 14. Now it's in the handling where you're going to feel that extra weight. Compared to a V8 G80, the sports springs are 10% stiffer up front and 20% stiffer out back. On a smooth, straight road, this means the G80 is planted and stable, but when the pavement gets a little uneven, it can feel a bit busy, especially in sport mode. It's not enough to be really bothersome, but occasionally I'll drop it back into normal to fight some of the bounce. Probably a good idea to separate those settings in the future so I can keep my sport steering and throttle response, but relax the springs for less than ideal surfaces. And it's the same with the steering. The Sport offers this really nice, thick steering wheel with a surprisingly responsive profile, but even when you put it in sport mode, it's nearly completely numb. However, given the overall character of the G80, more highway hooligan than canyon carver, I suspect that was intentional. Not having the car freak out and worry the driver with too much input when they don't actually probably even want it. It's the same situation with the chassis and the suspension and the differential. It's not that you can't push this car or even that it can't handle it when you do. It can. But there's a difference in the character of it. For instance, the rear wheels, they break free a little too easily and a little too early, in my taste, if this were an all-out performance machine. But it's not. Here, you push it through, the rear end breaks free, and the rear starts coming around just a little bit, but then everything settles back down with no drama, and it acts as though nothing happened. I have to assume it's intentional. It's like a little hint of sport without all the burdens of full committal. If I sound conflicted, it's because I am. Yes, this interior reminds me a little too much of the Hyundai Sonata, but it's still really nice in here. It's super quiet. These seats are beyond comfortable with more adjustments than I can get a handle on. This split sunshade is about as cool as it gets, and there is a ton of room in here. Class-leading rear headroom, in fact, and 15.3 cubic feet in the trunk, too. This infotainment system layout is pretty great, too, with touchscreen and rotary controls with cheater buttons and actual knobs and buttons for climate control as well, though I keep mistakenly turning up the heat when I mean to be raising the volume. Want a bonus? Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. According to Hyundai, no one wanted to pay extra for navigation. And for the stereo, Hyundai tagged Rolls-Royce's preferred audio vendor, Lexicon, for this 17-speaker system with these fancy aluminum covers. It even has special software that will take compressed audio and up the quality for you. Now sure, it doesn't have all the crazy tech of the top-tier Germans, but it does have a full suite of autonomous safety features, including smart cruise with auto hold. No, it's not as smooth as BMW's system, but it's a lot cheaper, and I would be hard-pressed to define for you how it's not as good. There's no way around it. If you lean too heavily on the sports side of sports sedan, you're going to end up sacrificing something, even if it's just price. The G80 Sport manages to avoid that trap and deliver a mid-size four-door GT car for someone who isn't obsessed with all-out performance no matter the cost. With its price advantage and one of the most impressive warranty and service deals on the market, Genesis should catch up to the competition quickly. Let's just hope they shed some pounds along the way and manage to keep Hyundai at a healthy distance. Hey, thanks for watching. For full details on the 2018 Genesis G80 Sport, just click the link in the description. You can head over to CarGurus.com and read my full review. And subscribe to the channel for more video reviews.